View lobby.
Are you ready to admit them?
I just clicked the button.
Okay.
Oh, they're there. Recording transcripts. Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 9:59 according to my clocks. We're going to give everybody about a minute to get join us here. But thanks for being here. This is a webinar to discuss the Montana local government review process. Assuming they're all in. You hearing me?
I just admitted everybody, so they're coming.
Oh, so I wonder if any of that came through.
Maybe try again.
Good morning, everyone. We'll just take one more minute for people to join us. Thanks for being here. For those of you, hopefully you're here at the right place. This is the webinar on the Montana local government review process, and we'll get started in just about 30 seconds or so. But happy Monday morning for everyone. We're getting close, getting a lot of people still joining. I hope everyone's looking forward to the storm that's coming. I get to drive to Plentywood tomorrow in the storm, so I may have to leave early. I'm not expecting good roads. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? And again, welcome. My name is Dan Clark. I am the director of the Local Government Center at Montana State University. We're part of the Extension Service, and we exist to help local governments around the state to do their jobs better. We provide technical assistance, research, and training. And today we're going to offer this webinar for members of local governments. We've also invited county extension faculty from across the state, as well as media outlets. Anyone from the media that's joining us, welcome. Our hope is that we can provide a brief explanation on what the Montana Local Government Review is and what it's going to comprise of if the local government jurisdiction that you live in chooses to engage in a local government review. What does that look like? And what is it that they will be reviewing and proposing to the voters? So that's what we'll go through and explain. This webinar is recorded, and it will be on our website, and that's at msulocalgov.org. I think I have a slide with it on there. And we also offered a webinar about 3 weeks ago that was explaining the voter review, the local government review process to this point. It's, what does the local government in their various jurisdictions need to do to initiate this? And so it was kind of a technical explanation of how to get the voter review on the ballot. And now we're explaining what the voter review or local government review is. And so those of you that maybe come across members and citizens and community members that are asking, what is this thing that's on our ballot? You can explain with some level of confidence what it is. You can always refer them to our website, where we'll be, we have some resources for citizens to access, as well as local government officials to access to better explain it. So joining me is Ashley Kent, our Associate Director. She's going to be co-piloting this to make sure all the technology stuff is working. She'll be monitoring the, the chat. So if you've got any questions you want to ask, you can type it in the chat. She'll watch and then interrupt me, and we'll see if we can address the questions that you've got. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll share my screen. I'm going to ask Ashley, is this the right screen we're looking at, the proper one?
Yep, looks great.
Okay. Well, here we go. Again, thanks for joining us, and we hope today's presentation will be useful for you. So let's see. All right, so like I mentioned, we did a webinar on January 29th. That webinar was explaining the voter review process or local government review process that gets the ballot or the initiative on the ballot. And we explained that. That webinar was recorded and it can be found at our website. We have a whole page dedicated to the local government review or voter review. I'll use that interchangeably, voter review, local government review. It's referred to both ways in the law and so and in the Constitution. And so we'll interchange those if that's not confusing. So today's focus on our webinar is going to be dealing with so what is the voter review? What is the study commission going to do if we choose in our jurisdiction to have a study commission or a local government review? So I'll start at the very beginning of time as we know it. So 1972, when everything began in Montana in this recent era, we adopted a constitution. It was upgrading and updating the constitution we had from 1889. And in our Constitution, Article 2 is our Declaration of Rights. And in there, it talks about self-government, that is a right that we have in Montana, according to our Constitution. The people have the exclusive right of governing themselves as a free, sovereign, and independent state, and they may alter or abolish the Constitution or a form of government whenever they deem it necessary. And so that form of government is what we want to focus on today, because that will play into later on in Article 11 of the Constitution. So Article 11 is the local government section of the Constitution, and in there, Section 9 has this section, and it says the voter review of a local government. So that's where we can call voter review, and then in the law they refer to it as the local government review. So the legislature shall, within 4 years of ratifying the Constitution, provide procedures for requiring each local government unit or combination of units to review its structure and submit one alternative to local government qualified electors at the next general election. So what's that saying? In 1974, all cities and all counties went through this voter review. It was a chance. We have a new constitution. We have new statutes outlining the structure of local governments. And so every local government had an opportunity to review and look at what is our existing form of government, what are the alternative form of governments that exist in the law, and they had to place something on the ballot to give the voters a choice between something different or something new, or maintain the existing form of government. And so that was the 1974 voter review process. All cities and counties went through it. Thereafter, every 10 years, it says the legislature shall require an election in each local government to determine whether a local government will undertake a review procedure every 10 years after the first election. So then it becomes an option after the 1974 election. So then you can choose whether you want to do it or not, because we assume maybe everything's going well. We don't know how or in what ways our government could be improved. So we don't need to do a review. We're quite satisfied with our existing form of government. But there may be a change in dynamics, change in population, change in technology, whatever it might be, that you're realizing, you know what, maybe we do need to review our form of government and evaluate it for its effectiveness and impact, and look at alternatives and see if we can't find a better way in which we can conduct the people's business by looking at other structures of government and comparing that with our current one. So the approval of the majority of the voters of the decennial general election on the question of undertaking the local government review is necessary to mandate the election of a local government study commission. So if they vote yes, if the voters vote yes, we want to do a voter review, that triggers the need to elect study commissioners. And these study commission members shall be elected during a regular scheduled election of the local government mandating their election. So basically what we're doing is we're saying, yes, we want to study our form of government, and we are going to elect all local citizens to be the study commissioners. And their role is to study the existing powers, form, and plan of government, look at alternative power forms and plans, see if something would make life better, government services more effective, and then if they can find a way in which they can improve upon this power structure or plan of government, they would then present that or propose that to the voters for their adoption or rejection. Gives the voters the final word or final say on whether they want to adopt whatever proposed changes come from this voter review. So where can we find the laws relating to this local government review? And in Title 7, Chapter 3, Part 1 is the section that deals with changing your local government. And so the particular laws, 171 to 193, deals primarily with the local government review. But that entire section deals with if you wanted to change in the interim, or how would a government go about changing their current or existing form of government, or make a modification to it. So that whole section of law deals with it. And that last section, 171 to 193, deals specifically with this decennial voter review process. The timeline we're looking at, we're right in the thick of it right now. So March 11th is the deadline for local governments to place on the ballot, or to pass a resolution would be the language for the ballot that would go on the ballot in June, on the June 4th primary election. And so that deadline is coming up rapidly. I'm feeling like I've got a sense that most local governments have taken care of that. If not, you can review how to go about that on the January 29th webinar we did that's on our webpage. So June 4th, we vote whether we want to do a study commission or local government review or not. And if your jurisdiction votes yes, then within 10 days after or shortly after the election has been certified, after the county commissioners have certified the election, then local citizens can begin filing to be study commissioners. And so that candidate filing, I think you can do that locally as well as through the Secretary of State's website. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I thought I read somewhere it was going to also be available on Secretary of State's website. So then they will file up until August 12th, and those that have not filed, so that's the opportunity to file, and that's the deadline, August 12th, to file to be a study commissioner. If no one files, or there's not enough people that file within the jurisdiction to fill all the study commission seats, then the local government, either the county commissioners or the city or town commission would appoint the vacancies on that study commission. Then November 5th is the election for the study commissioners, and then they begin 10 days after that has been certified, that election's been certified. The presiding officer of the governing body that's being studied, i.e. the mayor or the presiding officer of the commission or the commission chair, county commissions, they would declare or initiate the first meeting. They would call the first meeting for the study commissioners to meet and convene. And then the study commissioners would organize themselves. They create a budget, they create a timeline, they elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson, and they begin doing their work. And that's when the local government then steps back and allows the study commission to do their work. There is the ability for the local government that's being reviewed to appoint a liaison, oh gosh, the name escapes me. Ashley, what's the name? It's not an ex officio member.
Ex officio.
Thank you. So the ex officio member is then appointed someone within the local government. So it could be a staff member, it could be an elected official, and that ex officio member serves as a liaison with the study commission. So they're the bridge between what is the government that's being studied and the study commission. So they can answer a lot of questions and help that study commission understand that existing form of government. So that's basically what's that structure. This gives you an idea of the participation for local governments in the past. If you're interested, on our website, we're adding the historical information of these various study commissions that have taken place, and you can find out whether the history of your study, the history of your community relative to study commissions. We're still working on getting that posted. We're hoping to have it all up and running by the time study commissions get impaneled and sworn in. But you can see that there's been quite a lot of interest in the past. The 2014, 2016, there wasn't as much interest in this process, but there's a sense that there's going to be a greater interest in it this next cycle, this 2024 to 2026 cycle. Any questions so far, Ashley?
No, but we do have a clarification. Stuart Fuller shared about the filing process. The SOS website is that online filing is only available for federal or statewide candidates. So since this is a local election, they need to go to their local election administrator to file.
Great, thank you. And I think the FAQs that we worked with the Secretary of State's office reference their website. So we'll go in and change that FAQ. So thanks for clarifying that for us. All right, so at this point, let's just assume all y'all are going to be participating in this. That's going to make it a lot easier, because otherwise, why would we be participating in this call? So we're just going to assume your community has voted yes, or your county's voted yes. Now, we've elected study commissioners. It's sometime in the winter of next year. It's going to be December. What is the study commission going to be doing? And so that's what we want to talk about this session. And here's a couple other things I failed to mention earlier. The Local Government Center is going to offer during the summertime, while people are filing, we're going to do a similar webinar like this. It's going to be titled something to the effect of, "So you want to be a study commissioner?" And for those people that are study commissioner curious, may join and learn what would they be doing if they were to be a study commissioner. We think this is going to be fairly important for those that choose to be study commissioners, so that they understand what is it their course and scope of their duties would be, so they don't join up and want to be a study commissioner for all the wrong reasons. It just creates a lot of frustration on their part, as well as a frustration with the community and a frustration with the local government. So we want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we'll offer that session during the summertime for study commissioner curious people. As soon as the study commissioners are elected, sometime in January and in December and into January, the Local Government Center will be offering regional study commissioner trainings. So this will be a very in-depth, day-long training specifically for study commissioners to make sure that they understand. We'll talk about their specific communities, because we'll know who they are. We'll make sure that they're trained up on open meeting law and citizen participation law. We'll provide them as much resources as we can to help them understand the structure, power, and form of government. And then we'll also talk about ideas that they can engage the community to have this conversation. I think it's really important that the community is part of this conversation, not just amongst the study commission, but the study commission is reaching out into the community saying how and what and ways that the community, the local government could be better. And I think that's an important part of this process, to be very much engaged with the community and its the citizens. So I want to just touch on here what is not, or what local government review is not. So I want to make sure that those that are study commission curious realize what their lane is. So they're operating in their lane. So it is not a performance review of elected officials or staff. It's not an opportunity for you to look at individuals and what they're doing, how they're doing it, should they be, has nothing to do with people. So we're not looking at people, because people change in these positions all the time. So it's not the individuals in the positions, but what are the positions? Do we have a mayor? Do we have a city manager? Do we have a presiding officer? Is that working for us? Do we like that structure? Do we have just a commission form of government? Do we want to change into something different? So we're really looking at the positions and what are the powers and duties of those positions, not the individuals. It is not a review of local policies or ordinances. So we're not looking at that darn chicken ordinance. I hate the chicken ordinance. I want to get rid of the chicken ordinance. Well, that's not a way to do it. This doesn't look at the specific policies and ordinances of the city. It is not a review of the taxes, fees, or structures. You've got a real heartburn over that what do you call it? Special improvement district. You really don't like that special improvement district that bugs you. Well, this isn't a way to get rid of it. There's the political process you need to engage in, and this is not the political process for that purpose. It's not a review of the laws regulating how we elect local officials. So the elections are off the table. It's pretty specific in there that that's not something that this and the local government has the ability to manage or deal with. It's not a review of the laws that require regulating planning or zoning. Those things are reserved to the state, so that's not an option for us to look at planning and zoning regulations. It's not an opportunity to direct or require local governments to carry out any specific thing or do any specific function. So it's not about the people. It's not about what the local government is doing. It's how the local government is structured to address the work of the people. And I think that's, yeah, that was it. So the other thing that's important to point out here is to separate out, as you're looking at this process, to separate out how the local government is being executed, right? How those people elected in those positions are executing their position, executing their job. That may be different than the structure and the powers and how the local government is organized. So just because potentially our local officials aren't doing a really great job in their roles, it doesn't necessarily mean that the structure of government is not working. So I just want to point that out. Or we've got local government that's working really well given what they have, but it could be better if there's a different structure that they could adopt, if that makes sense. So either way, we could have elected officials just rocket it in spite of the structure, or we might have a fairly good structure that's really struggling because of the leadership that might be in those positions. Hopefully elected officials aren't taking offense there. It's always your neighbor that's the problem. All right, got a swig of Diet Coke in me, so I'm good to go. All right, so the voter review process, this is what it says in the statute. The purpose of the study commissions is to study the existing form and powers of local government and its procedures for delivering the local government services and compare them with other forms of government. So that's basically what the purpose is. Who are we? What are we doing today? How are we structured? What's our existing form of government? And what should we or could we look like in the future? Or if we're to adopt some other form of government, and would that make it better? So here's some of the things the study commission can do. They have to have public hearings and community forums. So that's a shall in the law. So in 73182, it says they shall have public hearings and community forums. And it then says that they may also find other ways to disseminate information, receive suggestions and input from the community, and stimulate this public conversation. So that's really on the shoulders of that study commission, is how do we engage our citizens about the structure of government and the way that government is structured to deliver its services. And is there a better way that in our community, specific to our needs, that we can improve upon that? So the idea of engaging the public about the commission's purpose and progress and conclusions is pretty important. Letting them know this is what we're doing, this is what we're finding out, helping the public and the voters come along with you on this journey of exploration and study and review, and help them engage in that conversation as you go through that process. I'm not a fan of study commissions that kind of sequester themselves, notice their meetings, but really don't do much to engage, fight and argue amongst themselves about what they think it ought to be, and then roll out some sort of a recommendation at the end. And the public has pretty much been kept out of that deliberative process. And it's really hard then for the public to get on board because they haven't learned what you have learned. And so very much having that process open and participatory, I think, is valuable. So the scope of the study commission. So in 73185, it has it's two sections, one that talks about counties, one that talks about municipalities. So you can recommend an amendment to the existing plan of government. So you have an existing plan of government, and there's options and things you can do to tweak or change or modify that existing plan. Not a lot of major things. Over the years, a lot of municipalities and some counties have shifted from partisan to nonpartisan elections. Some municipalities have shifted from elections by wards to elections at large. Whatever makes sense for your community. And those are just small changes to that existing plan of government. It's not a wholesale shift in reimagining it. It's just making those tweaks to how you operate your local government to make it better or more effective. You can recommend a plan of government authorized from 731 whatever to 736 whatever. So that's what we're going to talk about in a minute. There are various plans of government that you can choose from. And within each of those plans, there's a variety of options that you can choose in your plan of government. You can draft a charter, which is like a local constitution, and we can talk about that later in the presentation. Recommend a municipal county consolidation or amend an existing consolidation. So Butte, Silver Bow, or Anaconda Deer Lodge, they can amend that consolidation. Or if there's a community out there, a city and a county that said, you know, maybe we want to check out this idea of consolidating city and county government like Butte and Silver Bow or Anaconda and Deer Lodge. And there's some counties around and cities and counties around the state that might make sense for you. You can cooperate with other study commissions. So if the county study commission and the city study commission wants to cooperate in a particular area, they can do that. Or study commissions between two counties can cooperate and talk about county merger. So maybe we want to merge two counties. Instead of having two, we want to make one. There might be a compelling reason why that might take place in some areas around the state. Or the final thing that they can do is make no recommendation. So they say, look, we've looked at everything, we've studied it, we've looked at all of our options, and we just don't see how we can improve upon what we currently have. And that's not an uncommon refrain. And I think it's still a good exercise for communities to go through this process just to make sure that, yeah, we are at the apex, if you will, of our governing structure. We don't see how we can make it or improve upon it. But it's important to have that review because times change. Life is different today than it was in 2016, and it's different today than it was in 2006. And a county study commission may recommend service consolidation or transfer in cooperation with the study commission with other county or study commissions with more than one municipality. So there could be some opportunities for collaboration that the study commission can review, thinking, oh, if we did a joint study commission, there might be some things that you can say, maybe the city and county can work more closely together in a particular area, maybe in roads and road maintenance, or in equipment purchases that they could benefit from having certain pieces of equipment that neither one of them could afford or justify on their own. But by joining together in an interlocal agreement, they could purchase equipment they could both benefit from. So some of these things that the study commissions can review and say, this could make things better. We're not necessarily changing the plan or form or powers of government, but we are making recommendations of how government can be more effective. This is the same basic outline for municipalities as it was for counties. They can recommend changes to their existing plan of government. They can review the alternative forms of government. They can draft a charter, consolidate, and collaborate with other study commissions. They can recommend disincorporation, which counties, that is not an option to disincorporate. You can merge with another county, but you can't disincorporate. However, municipalities can. Counties cannot, municipalities can. So that's always an interesting conversation. And I believe one of these days I'm going to count. When they did this in 1974 to 76, they were required to place something on the ballot counter to their existing plan of government. And a lot of communities recommended disincorporation. And I don't know why. I wonder if that was like, yeah, we're happy with what we've got. We don't want to confuse things. So we're just going to put out there disincorporation, knowing that no one's going to want to disincorporate. And I don't think anyone took up that idea of disincorporation. Just we're out. So, but that is an option. They can submit no recommendation. And again, they can do the same. They can cooperate with other study commissions, either other cities or the cities in the county. Yeah, so they have that option to. So it's a really broad playing field that you can operate in and collaborate and coordinate. And really the idea is let's just have a good review of this local government and see what we can do better. So cooperation, 73108 of the code, it says that 2 or more study commissions may cooperate in the conduct of their studies. Cooperative studies do not preclude the study commission from making their separate reports. So they could make a report saying we want to consolidate. They could also make 2 independent reports saying if the consolidation doesn't work, then we propose these changes to the county, or we propose these changes in the municipality. So consolidation, county merger, there's the sections here. Consolidation is 73143. Merger is 144. They basically say about the same thing. I've tried to condense the language. It's pretty dense, but it's not an easy walk through the park just saying, hey, we're going to change your name and get rid of the city town limits. But you really got to look at what's going on financially. What are the debts of the 2 organizations, and how do we fairly and equitably share in the financial liabilities of the city and the county? What kind of services are we going to provide, and are we going to create service districts? Transfer of equipment and properties, because you're creating a new entity. You're not a county anymore. You're not a municipality. You're a new entity, and that's a consolidated city and county, which that's going to take some figuring out how do you stitch those things together. It does one of the following, and you have to do one or the other. Either you, the study commission, will figure a lot of these things out: the transfer, reorganization, abolishment, adjustment of boundaries, all that stuff. So the study commission can do that, or they can kick it over to the legislative body. So rather than the questions being answered and the problems being resolved by the study commission in that short amount of time, they can make the proposal saying, we're proposing this change, and then we're expecting the new government that's created to do all the details for us. I think that's what that's saying. So it's not for the faint of heart. There's some complexity to it. And that's why God created lawyers and law schools and the local government center. So all of this fun stuff excludes school districts and non-consolidated municipalities. So that's off the table. So like Butte, Silver Bow, Walkerville is an incorporated municipality, is not part of. It's their own municipality existing within that consolidated local government. Some counties only have one municipality that's incorporated. It's the county seat. So it makes sense, but there might be some other smaller outlying communities. Say Cascade County and Great Falls wanted to consolidate. That doesn't mean that they can have any oversight in Belt or Cascade, the communities of Belt or Cascade. They're still independent municipalities, unless they want to get on board and have one mega study commission and look at how do all of us consolidate into one massive government. So here's what the study commission, so those are kind of procedural things, the study commission, or options for the study commission. We're going to drill down. Here's the different alternative forms of government. And I just want to remind everybody that, back to that schoolhouse rock, we have executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government. They're co-equal. They share in responsibilities. They're check and balance against each other. And it's a very elegant process, I think, the way they've been developed and designed. There are certain responsibilities and privileges that are given to the executive. There are certain legislative responsibilities to make the laws and the policies by the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, which most of our conversation isn't going to deal with the judicial branch because that's pretty much off the table. The judicial branch has been reserved to the state, and so our local government study commissions don't review that part of the local government. But really what we're looking at is an evaluation or a study of what is the legislative and executive branch, how they function in our communities, and how do we share in those responsibilities and knit them together in an elegant fashion, in a nice balance of power. There are a few communities where they developed a charter, and that balance of power isn't as well knit together. And so it creates some challenges years later. So as I've mentioned before, the power, form, and plan of government is really the focus area for these study commissions. So let's look at power. There's two types of power, the general governing powers and self-governing powers. I will say 52 of the 56 counties in the state operate with general governing powers. And of the 127 municipalities, 44 operate with self-governing powers. The remaining 80, whatever it is going to be with general governing powers. So a majority of our local governments right now in the state of Montana operate with general governing powers. And a third or so of the municipalities or a fourth operate with self-governing powers, and only 4 counties operate with self-governing powers. What is that? So in the Constitution, it defines what a general governing powers is. And so this is a local government. An incorporated city or town has the power of a municipal corporation and legislative, administrative, and powers provided or implied by law. So the law dictates what the powers, so the statutes, or the legislature creates the statutes, and in there it defines the powers and duties of the local government. So the cities, and same with the counties. So they're very much tied to what does it say in the MCA? Do we have the authority to act in a particular way? And so if the legislature hasn't granted a specific authority or a specific power to a city or a county, then they can't exercise that power. If there's a need in the community that exists, but the legislature hasn't given them the power to address that need, then that need goes unsatisfied. Okay, that's general governing powers. So it's really whatever the law allows us to do is what we can do. Self-governing powers in the Constitution, it says that a local government unit may exercise any power not prohibited by the Constitution, law, or their local charter. So what that means is if the local government can exercise any power or authority that they want to, or that they find a need to exercise, or there's a need in our community, and if it's not a prohibited power, the local government can exercise that power by an ordinance or a resolution claiming that specific power, saying we are asserting our self-governing power, claiming this power that we need, and we're going to address that particular issue. And unless the legislature prohibits a local government from exercising that power, then they can, if that makes sense. They can step into that space, we'll exercise this power, and it's not something that's prohibited by the legislature. So we are a shared power state. Nowhere in the law or the Constitution does it talk about us being a home rule state, which is another, it's a common language that's used in most other states. And home rule is where specific power is granted to local government, or limiting the power of the legislature to intervene in the local government. It's a different definition of relationship between the legislature and the local governments. So we're not a home rule state. We are a shared power state where all power except those prohibited are with the local government. So the local government has all powers except for what's prohibited. Now, they just don't willy-nilly exercise power. There's still the legislative process that the local government has to go through in order to claim that power. They have to draft ordinances, they have conversations in their community. The community is saying, we want you to deal with some issue. They're saying, okay, we'll have to go through some hearings. Let's frame that power out. We'll adopt an ordinance through the ordinance procedure before we can exercise that power. So they're just not saying, hey, I've got a crown on my head. We've got self-governing powers. We're going to do whatever we want to. That's not the case. There's still very much the check and balance between the public and the local government, whether they want them to exercise that power or not. Examples of self-governing powers. Now, some of these that were fought over years ago have now since been made available to all local governments, whether they have general or self-governing powers. For example, the implement of local development fees. That was something that communities with self-governing powers recognized that they needed additional fees when a development goes in to offset the cost of infrastructure investment. And there was a challenge whether a local government with self-governing powers could actually do that. It went through the courts process, and the courts ruled that yes, they can. And that was found to be a successful means of financing infrastructure development in communities. And the legislature then moved forward and said, well, why don't we make this available for all municipalities and counties in the state? So that's one of the things that happened. Lawfully acquire and operate gas or electric utilities. That's not something that a local government has the authority in the law to operate a gas or electric utility. So those that do operate gas or electric utilities have self-governing powers, have then exercised that self-governing authority and said, we're going to create these local utilities. Here are some other things a city or county can do. These are from Supreme Court cases when a local government exercised their self-governing authority. It was challenged whether they had that authority or not, and it was settled in the courts on the side that yes, they do. So for mandatory seatbelt, regulation of nude dancing by cities, that's always a fun one. Everybody gets excited about that one. What else? Oh, the adoption of the non-smoking ordinances that came out of the city of Helena. So here's another example of where local governments provide leadership in the state. City of Helena adopted an ordinance prohibiting smoking in gambling establishments, and that didn't go unchallenged. And the courts determined that they did have that authority because they're exercising that the authority they have to regulate the health and safety of their citizens. Other cities stepped in and said that had self-governing powers. Well, we want to do the same thing, but you'll notice each one is going to be different. Each of those local ordinances will be a reflection of the local interests and local needs. So now we have gaming establishments that have statewide presence, but are having to modify their operations for every little community that has self-governing powers that has adopted these ordinances. And it was becoming somewhat of a burden upon those businesses. And that's when the state then created the Indoor Air Quality Act, outlined it for all municipalities in all counties, so statewide. So there was a consistency in the way that was being applied. But the idea came from local government, and when there became a statewide interest, then that's when the state then followed up with a law for everyone. So those are some ways in which local governments have exercised their self-governing authority by giving themselves power to do something by way of ordinance or a resolution. Now, certain things are denied. Local governments cannot do these things, or they need to be delegated that authority to them by the legislature. So they can establish a rate or a price otherwise determined by a state agency. So if DEQ has a fee for a permit, that's the fee, and you can't say, well, we're self-governing, we're going to change that. You can't prevent the erection or regulation of amateur radios being operated in vehicles or the erection of the antennas. And that's because amateur radios are part of the state's emergency response infrastructure. So we don't want to have a lot of regulation going on those that practice. Can't do a sales tax, can't impose a duty on another local government. So there's more. That's just a handful of things that are excluded. Here's mandatory provisions, all laws establishing legislative procedures and requirements of local governments, all laws regulating elections of local governments, all laws requiring regulation of planning and zoning. Those are all reserved to the state. Budget, finance, borrowing procedures, again, those are all reserved to the state. So we're not having local governments creating their own budget and finance laws, but everyone's going to apply that consistently across the state. All right, so those are the powers. So as a study commission, that's one of the first things I would recommend they do is look at what is our existing power, what's the alternative power, and is there an interest in us wanting to change and shift to something different. So if we are currently general governing powers, say a general governing powers county, is there a compelling reason why we'd want to adopt self-governing powers? Are there things we would like to act on and address in our county that we currently cannot because we don't have that power or authority delegated to us by the legislature? And would it improve upon our county citizens' lives, make them better, make us more effective, more efficient in delivering our services if we had self-governing powers? So I think that's a really important conversation to be had within a county or a municipality. Or vice versa, it could be that we are currently a self-governing powers municipality. Do we want to adopt and go to the general governing powers which we once had? Are we no longer interested in retaining the self-governing powers and go back to general? So that would be an interesting conversation to have as well. So I think that's the conversation that needs to take place first. Once you dial that in and say, you know, we're leaning more on this in this direction, now let's look at the forms of government. There are these different forms, the commission executive, and again, this is defining the relationship between the two branches of government. And so they outline what those forms of government look like. So the commission executive, the commission manager, elected county officials form, the commission form, the commission presiding officer and town meeting. And we'll go through it and explain what each of those look like. Now, the commission executive form, in each of these have what we call, quote unquote, a recipe, where the legislature has said, look, if you're going to adopt one of these forms of government, we're going to give you a variety of sub options that you can choose from. But initially, everyone's going to be operating at the default. So everyone operates at the default. Study commissions in the future, you can say, hey, that's the default, but what are the other options? And do we like the other option better than the current way we operate? So here's how that looks. As you look down here, this is the list of structure of local government. So this is for the commission, executive, or council mayor form of government. They have an elected city council and an elected mayor. And you see all along those statutes down here, they each have a 1 or 2 or a 3 next to them. And that number represents the sub option. So let's look at this one that's highlighted, 73218, sub option 2 is the default that the legislature has predetermined for all commission executive forms of government. So coming into it in 1972, this was the default. And in order to change to something different, you need to place that question on the ballot for the voters to make that choice. So there has been several over the years, several municipalities with the commission mayor form of government that have shifted from 2, which is the elected by, the commission is elected by districts in which candidates must reside and which are apportioned by population. So some of the more smaller jurisdictions struggle with that, trying to find 75 people on one side of town, one of those people willing to run for office. So what they've done is they've adopted number 1, which is election at large. So that's been one of the ways in which local governments have changed their plan of government by shifting from the default that's identified in the law as being number 2, and in this case to number 1, elections at large. So each of those have a recipe like this with the predetermined sub options. And that's one of the things the study commission can do is they can just look at, do we want to just modify our plan of government? Do we want to change from partisan to nonpartisan or from nonpartisan back to partisan? That's all the part of that conversation. So here's in the red is the recipe, and this is how it's structured, where the voters elect a commission and a mayor. And the mayor then is responsible for hiring the department heads and administering the day-to-day operations of that municipality. And the commission consents to the appointment of those department heads. So the mayor appoints with the consent of the commission. That's the commission executive form in its very rough graphic. The commission manager, where the voters elect a city council or a city commission, that commission then hires or appoints a manager based on merit. And then the manager is responsible for the day-to-day operations, hiring, managing, and terminating all the department heads and employees. And the commission by law is unable to direct staff. Their only ability is to direct the manager. They pass the ordinances, they pass resolutions, and they direct the manager to have certain things done. And then it's up to the manager to decide how that's executed. But the council cannot do an end run around the manager by engaging in directing staff on their own. So that's, and you can see there, county has a commission manager form, and the municipalities have their own structure for the commission manager. The commission form, or which is the 73401 to 73418, that's the commission form, or the elected county officials form. And that's the statutory framework that was initially adopted, and all counties came into the all but one, came into the 1974 voter review as being the elected county officials form of government. And unless your voters have voted to change something about that existing plan, you are still a elected county officials form of government. So unless something's changed, you're likely that ECOF form of government. Now, this is described where the voters elect the commission, and the commission then appoint all the department heads. The commission operates as the legislative branch and the executive branch all in one governing body. They make the policies, they make the rules, they pass the laws, and then they're also responsible as a governing body to enforce those or to implement those to make sure that they're carried out. So they're both, if you will, the mayor or manager and the council all in one governing body. The presiding officer, so of the commission, has some executive responsibilities, where the presiding officer then appoints committees with the consent of the commission, the rest of the commission. They can be called a presiding officer or a mayor, depending on how they want to identify in their form of government. Most counties operate this way. Most counties, the chairperson or presiding officer has some of those. They may be responsible for the agenda. Just a few executive responsibilities. If there's an emergency, the presiding officer is the one that declares the emergency. That's an executive function. So that's how that operates. The commission form, if you adopt something different than the elected county officials form, you need to adopt the commission form of government. So it's a little nuancy. We can talk about that more in detail when it becomes an issue, but you need to shift from the ECOF to the commission form of government and make the change. Here's the commission presiding officer form of government. There's the statute where the voters elect a city commission or a county commission, and then the county commission then elects the chief executive or the mayor. And then the mayor is also still a member of the commission, but they have all the executive authority that the executive branch of government does. So they appoint with the consent of the council, and they're responsible for the day-to-day operations of their organization. So we have two communities in the state right now that operate with this form of government, and that's Virginia City and Broadview, Montana. They're north of Billings. And then the town meeting form of government. This is direct democracy. This is where we don't have a representative form of government. We have direct democracy, where the legislative body is the community members. They then meet. They have a meeting where they pass all ordinances, pass their budget as a community, and then they elect a here we go, the town chairperson who acts as the executive, who does the day-to-day operations. So it is only available to communities that have less than 2,000 in population, and a quorum of the legislative body is at least 10% of the qualified electors in that jurisdiction. We have one community in the state that operates with this form of government, and that's Pinesdale. And they also have self-governing powers and a charter. So they've taken this form and they've modified it a bit to meet their needs in their charter. So they're not strictly operating as the statutes define in the MCA, but they've been able to modify it to meet their community's interests and needs. So this would be the organizational structure. The voters, They are the legislative branch, one vote, one person, one vote. They don't have elected representatives. They represent themselves and their own interests. They elect a town chairperson who then is responsible for the day-to-day operations. And I see that we've got about 6 minutes left. Again, this will be recorded. I'll continue going. If you need to bail at the hour, you're welcome to. The last thing I want to talk about, and I don't want to rush too fast here, but is the charter. Now, the charter is, like I mentioned, it's similar to a constitution, where the local government defines what is the legislative branch, what are its specific authorities and powers, how it's comprised, what's the executive branch, how is that, what are the powers, authorities, responsibilities, how are they elected, what's their term of office. All of that's written out and defined in a charter. In order to have a charter, you need to adopt self-governing powers. That's why it's in red. You can't have a charter without self-governing powers. However, you can have self-governing powers without a charter. You can be self-governing powers and adopt any one of these other statutory frameworks that you'll see, like the commission. So, for example, Wolf Point, they have a commission executive form of government, normal council mayor, whatever's outlined in the statute, they operate that way. However, they have self-governing powers, which allows them to operate and exercise any authority that a general governing powers community has, as well as any authority that's not prohibited by the legislature. So charters, local government can frame any combination of units. So a combination, or so like the Butte Silver Bow and Anaconda Deer Lodge, they have a charter, they have self-governing powers, and in that charter, they consolidated their local governments into one, and they've outlined how that's structured. So they adopt, amend, frame it out, they can revise it. Let's see, they need to establish executive, legislative, and administrative structures and organizations. Oh my goodness, that they are superior to state law. Sorry about that. So this charter is superior to state law as long as it doesn't have something in the charter that's prohibited by the Constitution.
So Dan, can you clarify real quick just what that means, superior to state law? Does that mean that they don't have to follow state law?
So if they wanted to do something different than what the state law says, they need to exercise that authority through the ordinance process. If the self-governing powers community wants to deviate from what the MCA says, they need to pass an ordinance saying we're stepping into this space that is not contemplated by the legislature and it's not prohibited by the legislature. So if it's not prohibited, so otherwise, if you haven't stepped into that space, then you have to follow the state statutes. So you operate, not, chugging along the same way you were before you adopted self-governing powers until something comes up that says, oh, we want to do that thing. Now we're going to step out into that space. We're going to adopt an ordinance and we're going to do that. Does that make sense? I'm looking at you, Ashley, if you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that there is a limitation. You don't get to write your own state statute for your community because you adopt a charter.
Yeah. So all the state law applies to you until you supersede it with an ordinance. Yeah. That's 71105, I want to say, is the statute that talks about that. So like I said, equivalent to the state constitution, it's approved by the voters. It defines power, structures, duties, and limitations, right? So what powers do we have? What limitations do we want to place in that powers? For example, Billings, in their charter, they have placed a limit on the number of mills that they can levy. And the only way they can increase their levied mills is they go back to the voters and amend their charter, which they've done several times over the last 50 years. Not ideal, but I think that was probably negotiated at the time when they were working with the public saying, yeah, we'll give you self-governing powers, but we want to have a check built into that charter by having a mill levy cap. And then I-105 was passed and we put the mill levy cap across for all local governments. So now it's kind of a redundancy. and that they could remove it if they wanted to, and they would still have a check on that ability to raise their taxes. So really what they're looking at in the charter is defining these two, the executive and legislative branches, and any other administrative structures that they would like to place in their charter. So legislative body, how many members of the legislative body, term of office, are they elected at partisan or nonpartisan? Are they districted or at large? What's the ways to remove them? Methods of filling vacancies? All that can be defined in the charter. And it's not uncommon in the charter to say, let's see, grounds for removal, vacancies will be determined as per law, right? And they just make the reference to the MCA saying whatever the MCA says about either filling a vacancy or removing someone from office, we're going to follow that. So they don't have to create their own law, because that one in the MCA works pretty well for us. Then on the executive side, is it elected or appointed, right? Are we going to have elected mayor or elected chief executive, or are we going to appoint them like a manager? Or are we going to have multiple officers? Say we have a commission form of government, and so we have multiple executive officers and legislators are all one governing body. What's their term of office, powers, duties, grounds for removal? The same thing you have to do with both branches of government. They may, in your charter, specify other departments, boards, or other commissions, any limitations that you want to place upon the governing body, as long as it's not contrary to the Constitution or the law. And I like to say the cleaner, the simpler, the less prescriptive a charter is, I think the better. Allow those governing bodies over the decades and over the years to have the flexibility to move how they feel necessary and as they respond to the needs of their community. I'm less interested in trying to put a lot of restrictions on in a charter for fear that in 5, 10, 20 years, it becomes a real liability and it becomes a challenge for you to get back in there and change that in the future. I'd rather have the public check that than have it checked in the charter. That's just my approach. I like many options. I'm an options-oriented person. All right, charters may only be amended by voter approval, and that can either come through a petition for the voters or by the elected governing body can place a change on the ballot. But all of it has to be, all changes are done through the election process. So as I mentioned, every community that has a charter must have self-governing powers, but not every community that has self-governing powers has to have a charter. And we're getting close, folks, not too far over time. Here's the makeup in the state. We have 4 charters in the state for the counties, 52 non-charters. And you can see for the municipalities, 32 municipalities have charters. Where are we at? 42 have self-governing powers. I might have said 44 earlier. But that's the general makeup of the state. And if you do make changes, which you're able to make changes in between the 10-year cycle, please let us know at the local government center so we can track that and retain that, because no one else in the state's keeping track of that other than us. And so it's helpful for us to have that data and information. And so with that, is there any questions, Ashley, that anyone's typed into the chat?
I'm not seeing any yet. We'll give folks a minute or two here if they have some and are maybe working on them. While they're doing that, Dan, I just want to mention the LGC will host a office hours specifically for voter review questions a week from Friday, March 8th, from 10 to 11. At least one of us, if not both of us, will be on for the entire hour. So if folks have questions, that's a great time to log on and ask. We'll post that information on our website, on the voter review site, and I will put that website link in the chat again. It's msulocalgov.org, and then you can click on the voter review tab at the top or go directly to this link. It'll get you to that Teams meeting invite for next Friday, March 8th at 10 a.m. And we do not have any comments.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for participating. As we mentioned, this is recorded. We will place this on our website. So if someone in your team or in your organization wasn't able to make it, and I know Mako's doing their midwinter conference starting today. So a lot of county commissioners are driving to Great Falls. So if you can let them know, we'll send an email out to that same email list that received the notice. We'll send an email with a link to this recorded video. So if there's questions that come up, refer them to that. Members of the media, where if you've joined us, welcome. And hopefully this has satisfied a lot of your questions. And we can take additional questions from you as you're trying to draft op-eds or explanations or do some sort of a media outreach to the public over the next several weeks leading up to the vote. We can help you make sure you get a good story out there. I think the more people understand what this means, then they'll be informed when they go to the ballot box. And if they choose to do it, they're choosing to do it because they want to have a study, not because they don't understand it. Or if they reject it, it's because they don't understand it. So I want to make sure we have an informed electorate. So and those county extension agents that have joined us, welcome. Thanks for being here. And again, if you've got questions, we're happy to respond to those. So, okay. With that, thanks so much. And we'll see you over the summer when we do the study commission specific training, which will look similar to what we did here, but maybe some other specific training on reports and things like that. So with that, we'll sign off, and thanks again. Have a great week and happy Monday.
Yeah, we just had a question come in. Is there any kind of publication for local papers that we could put out? Oh, did he leave? Cindy, I will see. We don't have anything, but we'll work on, see if we can create some kind of template for you to make it a little bit easier. We'll put that on our agenda for our team meeting. And definitely check our website regularly for updates as we continue to provide this information. It'll all be archived there on our voter review page. Thanks all.